And as soon as you do that, people leave.
You calling me part of the problem? I actually officially want to go back in time. I want my New York answer to be transcribed over my first answer.
But the people who leave are typically the people you want to evict anyway, right? So you put a big... And we're back on the MHP podcast. I'm your host, Frank Rizzo. Joining me, as always, my partner, Eric Busuttil. Eric, are you nice and chippy this morning?
Super chippy.
Because you've been very chippy this week. This has been a very, very chippy week. It's been
I don't think I was chippy.
You were chippy.
It was a frustrating week.
This was a chippy week for Eric.
All right.
So I think the problem was Eric was traveling, I was traveling different ways. I think Eric was a little off because of that.
Well, you guys are used to being linked up all the time. Right?
100%. I'm with him more than my wife.
It's like a husband traveling without a wife.
Correct.
Or even worse.
Correct.
Like a high school boyfriend
but
traveling separately.
Our last couple of trips, he went one way, I went another way.
Okay.
Yes.
So and then same thing next week. He's going one way, I'm going another way.
So
Yeah, that usually tends out to be a better trip.
Without each other?
Well, yeah, because you're spreading out. Whereas opposed to if you're looking at the same thing, it's
He
not
calls
as
me more than my wife calls me. when I'm away without him, it's just like...
You all right?
What's up,
yeah,
bro?
We spoke 4 minutes ago.
Who cares who I'm with? What do you mean, where am I?
Who's that voice in the background?
what time are you coming back? So if you're wondering who that voice is, that here we have a really special program for you today. We have Chris Stout from Stout Capital. He's joining us. We are bringing a show, and we've talked about this in other podcasts, but we're really going to do a deep dive today. The differences between mobile home park investing and multifamily investing, right? So to give Chris a little background to people who don't know, he's got a 20-year experience in real estate. He was a builder in the New York City area, became one of the top builders in the Staten Island market. He's been a decade of being a multifamily owner and operator. I think right now you have about 475 doors.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
approaching 500.
And 50 million.
50 million.
Under management.
Yeah. That's crazy to say.
That's a big
Crazy
number.
To say. Yeah.
Big number. So we're really, really glad to have Chris here. You know, point of reference, we know Chris, right? We've had a relationship with Chris for a number of years, and we've actually seen this, growth that you've had in the multifamily space, and we thought that you'd be a great addition to kind of talk about some of the differences between the two, between the two asset classes.
I know why we got started, right? And went out and kind of did something different than others are doing. And people ask me that question. And I remember when we first started, I mean, the biggest challenge for people, I guess, was, what are you doing in these other markets? I was traveling 16 hours away. I mean, and then we have partners who've invested with us, and getting them to invest with us in Alabama or Georgia, especially at first, was just, it was somewhat of a challenge. And we could have probably got a lot further a little bit quicker if we would have picked closer markets, but we didn't, because we like these other markets. And what were your thoughts? I mean, what made you, and I see some of the areas that you're in, I mean, you're in Arkansas, I believe, right?
Arkansas, Alabama, and North Carolina.
Okay.
So you guys started your out-of-state journey prior to COVID, right? Yeah.
About 8 years ago.
8 years ago, out-of-state.
Out-of-state.
So I've been buying apartments for 14 years, and the date's easy for me to remember because the first two-family I bought in Staten Island was when my daughter was born. She's 14 already, which is crazy. But I was all New York. Like, don't talk to me about another market other than New York. And being born and raised in New York, some of us think that only the action happens here. There's no action outside of New York. So COVID happened, and that was my tipping point. Like, I have to get out of here. Like, we have no control as landlords. So the city is basically in charge of you collecting rent or not.
Got it.
And that was the big tipping point for me. Like, it's time to go.
But you know what was fascinating just about this, and I've got to ask this because I know you built your career as a builder, right? And you were building in Staten Island, which is in New York City, which is one of the most regulated markets. And you became one of the known builders on the island, which is difficult, right? So a lot of people try to spot build. And here you've got a career built and doing very well, right? And you pivot. You just do a complete pivot. And now people don't look at you as a builder, not that you don't have that pedigree, but
Yeah.
people consider you a multifamily operator. So tell us about that change.
Yeah. So I started buying apartments. I actually started doing renovations on people's homes to make money to buy apartments. So I always wanted to buy apartments, but I thought the path to true wealth was buying 2 families on Staten Island. I'm going to buy as many 2-family houses as I possibly can on Staten Island. So I started a business where I put an ad in the Marketeer. I was doing repairs in people's homes, fixing doors, that kind of thing. Then that business grew to be a custom home building business. So it went through to doing additions, then custom homes. So now building custom homes for people, something my goal was to continue to build custom homes for people and continue to buy apartments side by side. So
But in duplexes, single family and 2-family homes.
2-family homes.
2-family homes.
Yeah, I thought all the money was in the 2-family.
Okay.
2-family, and the idea of me owning a 30-family building in Brooklyn, and we know this now not to be like the holy grail, but the idea of me owning a 30-family building in Brooklyn 10 years or 20 years from now was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with all that money? Like anyone who owns a 30-family building is like the most wealthy person around. So just continued to grow these businesses in tandem. And then I started leveraging old relationships from custom home building into investors into building spec homes. So now I start building spec homes with my own money and using some money past clients in the home building, in the custom home building side. Because anyone who's had a custom home built, you either built a relationship with the builder or you never want to look at the guy again. So, just focusing on making sure that I kept good relationships with the people that I was working for. And that was always, I think I'm going to put that towards like why the business was successful, is because I did no matter what I had to do to make sure that the customer was happy. And it actually leveraged into being able to raise capital from people because when you're a builder, and everyone knows that there's horror stories behind home building, is shit gets messed up. Problems come, and now the builder's going to be faced with, do I change my phone number or do I just pay whatever's the problem and get it fixed?
So you have the same phone number from 14 years ago?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's important.
I'm on number 10. No. So I'm probably a little too accessible now because my same phone number is, you could just type me online and you'll find my cell phone number in a second. So, which is funny. Sometimes I have people call me from Instagram.
Got it.
Hey, I follow you on Instagram. I'm like, it's my fault. My phone number's online. So just do the right thing no matter what. So now the business grows. So really what I did a couple years ago is I kind of said, all right, I need a plan going forward. How am I going to scale? And I started learning more about scale, just the general business, scaling a business. How do I continue to grow? Am I going to be able to build more houses in Staten Island? Oh, actually, here's the biggest thing that turned it for me. I heard from someone, if there's no one in your industry making the money you want to make, you're probably in the wrong industry. If there is someone making the money you want to make in your industry, well, then you just got to kind of angle towards that. So if I say like a 1 and 2 family home builder building in an infill market or doing renovations within a market, there's people making good money doing it, but is there anyone making the money that I want to make in 10 or 15 years from now? And really the answer is no. So are there builders making a couple million a year in, building homes or doing large additions within the market? Yeah, there's probably guys hitting the $1 million, $2 million mark. Is there anyone making 10 million a year? Probably not. I don't know anyone making 10 million a year doing what I'm doing in our market. So I basically zoomed out and I said, all right, my 3 buckets are renovations, new home construction, and apartments. So I want to put over the last 10 years how much I've made from each and how much time went towards each one. The home renovations took up the absolute most amount of time and relatively made the least amount of money. The new home construction took up significantly less time than the renovations, and made more money. So from least to best, renovations, new home construction, and then the apartments made less than all of them, but took up no time at all compared to the rest. So if I then equal it back out, the apartments, if it got the rest of the time, light years more.
So now your focus is I've got to get more apartments.
Yeah, now I'm going into the apartment business.
So all right, you're going into the apartment business, but then, now you come in, and I know you mentioned COVID being a deciding factor to get out of New York City. You still decided to, hey, I'm leaving New York City, right?
Yeah.
Which is a big, we talked about being comfortable, being uncomfortable. That has to be an uncomfortable feeling to say, hey, I'm going to just pick up. I'm good here. I know the market. There's a comfortability from going down the block and being able to see my property every day. And now I'm going to go, 800 miles away. Like what brought you to that?
The reason that I left the state is twofold. I did at the time, before I started acquiring apartments out of state, I did apartments locally for 11 years. So I acquired $10 million worth of apartments by myself. And I'm like, you know what? This isn't scalable. It's not going to scale at the rate that I want it to. So I want to bring investors on. Could I bring investors into the New York market? That's where the problem kicks in. So could I bring investors into the New York market, and could I buy stuff at the scale I need to buy? Because in the multifamily side, I'm sure it's similar in the mobile home park side. It's a unit game. You want good quality units, but you need as many under control as you possibly can.
Got it.
Because we want to make it that $20 makes a very big difference.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You have 10,000 doors, $20 a month makes a monster difference.
100%.
So buying apartments in New York, well, the apartments are very expensive, so it's going to be difficult to get the right amount of doors. And then we don't have control. So I could go to an investor and say, hey, man, we're doing everything right, but the tenants suck. That's why your returns aren't where they're going to be this month.
And you're fighting a different animal, which you have no control over, which is, and I think that was our biggest pressure point when we looked at it. We said the legislation here is against us. Like everything we're doing, if we could do it right. We could find the property right, but there's things that we don't control in operating our business, and we'll never control it, right? And so there's no easy way for us to say we can execute a business plan with confidence. Right?
Yeah, you have to be. It's simple as we need to do business in a place that allows us to do business.
And we're living in a smaller world, right? Like my biggest obstacle was the traveling at first, but I mean nowadays, and I'm sure you have as well, people that invest outside of New York, from New York, are typically PA, Jersey, and they're traveling 2-3 hours each way anyway.
Right.
So I get on a plane, I fly into Atlanta. I mean, it's an hour and a half to 2 hour flight. And I got to drive a little bit. And, some of our properties now we're buying in North Carolina, 8.5 hours. I mean, we get so much done driving and talking.
Yeah.
We're on the phone, we're taking calls, we're discussing things. I mean, when else do we typically have the time to sit there for 8 hours and concentrate and focus and strat plan? And that slowly just got out of my head.
Yeah.
So, and now I'm traveling, I don't know, and I'm sure you're doing the same thing. We're traveling, once every 2 weeks at least?
Yes.
I mean, this last month, I've been 3 different places, and I got another trip next week. So once a week, once every other week, but 1 or 2 days I'm in, I get what I got to get done, and I'm out.
It's just, you make that part of the plan, right? It's just part of the plan that if, we're going to find opportunity, then opportunity doesn't have to be, it's nice to say it's around the corner, but it doesn't, if you're really looking for the best opportunities, you have to kind of widen your sphere.
And I can imagine for you, Chris, the red tape in your renovations and building in New York compared to what you're doing where you are, it's like cakewalk.
I get your business as well, like in the multifamily space. Like, so people go from doing, I don't know, name a business, drop shipping, I don't know, some random business, and like, I'm going to start buying apartments. To go from one business to now buying apartments out from where you live, that's a very difficult transition. And the question that comes to me would be valid. The question that comes to me sometimes is like, how do you manage apartment buildings from New Jersey? And really managing apartments within my market for 10 years before venturing out makes it extremely easy. And I would say I visit my out-of-state stuff more than I visit my in-state stuff. I don't go to my apartments in New York. If there's a problem and there's a problem circulating around, we get it handled through the proper channels.
Sure.
So any CEO, like it's the same question, like this is obviously blowing it up through the roof, but is the CEO of Coke visiting delis?
No.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Maybe if he wants to specifically go on a tour just to see it, but he's not. But he's on a day-to-day basis. He's not checking every new account.
No, and any business owner who's running a business the right way. So we all hear about like a business shouldn't be a job. So it shouldn't require your eyes on the thing, whatever the thing is. So you should have procedures in place and people taking care of the thing, and you're managing and you're zooming out and you're making sure everything's going right from a zoom out. So it shouldn't if my eyes were required to be on that multifamily checking the pool, well, I messed up so many other ways before my eyes landed on that pool.
Got it. And once you get, so that first one, that first property that you'd find out of state, right? That first that you said, look, I'm ready to go. COVID hits. I realize that I got to get out of the New York City market because you've potentially lost some control there. And you say, I'm going to go find another market. I mean, what did everybody think when you said, hey, I'm going, 4 states away, 600 miles, and I'm gonna invest? I mean, you bought a $10 million property. It wasn't like you spent, it wasn't like you spent $100,000. Yeah, $100,000. Yeah. And not that $100,000 is chump change, but you didn't buy a 1 family or 2 family. You just went in, I'm buying a $10 million property, 4 states, 600 miles away. Yeah. Guys, who's with me? Like, what did everybody think at that time?
It's so funny. Like my whole life, even like, even the smaller stuff, whenever I've done anything, the amount of times I've heard, man, you're crazy. It was just like, and it's almost like expected now, the things I do. Like I don't get too many questions from like, you sure this is the right thing? I've heard that so many times that anyone who's like in my immediate circle was like, no, he's gonna go do something that people think is nuts. So I have to say, like, the reception towards investor, and I could probably say that I left the state at the perfect time for local investors, because when I left the state to go buy much larger properties, it wasn't cool to do that yet. Like when you guys were doing it, New York was still like, no, why are you leaving New York? When I left New York, it was obvious.
Yes.
Like you're leaving New York because it's obvious that you can't control your business here like you should. So we're going to leave the state. We're going to go and for me, it was find the absolute best property manager. And in the multi-space, it's easier to find a property manager than your business.
Yeah, and that's one thing. But when you found that first deal, I mean, what did you do? What did you look at first? Was it what was your process? Was it I'm looking at a market specifically? Was I looking at a deal specifically? What was the first thing that you looked at, and what was the process for you finding that deal to see if there's, what's different between us?
So a lot of people ask me the question of, what do you do first with a deal? And no one likes my answer, but my answer is I need to see a picture of it. So a lot of times when people, like brokers, want to send me a deal, they send me a P&L and a rent roll. And I'm like, dude, I don't care about the P&L and rent roll. I need to see the building. And the main reason I need to see the building is, it doesn't matter what the expense, it doesn't matter what the guy's currently doing, it doesn't matter what he's currently getting. CapEx and maintenance will kill any deal. So if you take any deal and you put a current P&L, current rent roll on it, and I look at it, I'm like, no, this thing, first of all, on any garden apartment, the roofs are tremendous. We have a lot of, like if we have a roof job and we don't account $300,000-$400,000 towards a roof job, like we could bankrupt the deal. So I need to just see the deal. I need to lay my eyes on it. So was I looking for a deal or a market first? I was looking for a deal. Then I was checking the market was in, because I was concerned about what the actual asset looked like.
Got it.
So the first one I bought, the 60 unit in Fayetteville, North Carolina, not to be confused with Fayetteville, Arkansas, which we also have stuff in. It was a 2004 build. And I was just so attracted to the look and the feel of the building and the deal, the actual structure itself. Like I know we could buy this thing, and it's not going to be trouble for us.
So I think we look at it differently. The way the property looks for us, I think it's almost, I don't want to say it's inconsequential, but it's not the first thing that we look at. So first thing we've looked at is region, right? We want to be in a region where we know that there's familiarity with all the laws, right? The landlord-tenant laws are pretty much stable straight throughout. So there's not, I mean, every county has its own little take on things, but essentially we were 85% of the way the same, right? So we knew we could go in there, we can operate a business. We knew that we were in states that were going to be business friendly, which is one of the things that were super important for us.
Yeah.
And then when we look at a deal, we know based on if we're buying a park that has older inventory, one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to upgrade the exterior of the homes anyway to create a sterile environment, and we're going to bring in new homes anyway. So the new homes are going to change the landscape, but you're not building a new building, right? You have to have a structure there in place that you feel you can work with.
Yeah. So and tell me if you run into this trouble. So there's something that I'll run into the multifamily space is I'll say, what's my net purchase price? So my net purchase price is my total cost of the deal. So not what I'm buying it for, but what's my total cost of the deal? So say I buy a $10 million building, closing costs plus the CapEx I'm going to have to see in the first 24 to 48 months. So, okay, I buy the building for $10 million. I have, $200,000 of closing costs. It'll be less than that. So we buy a building for $10 million. We have $100,000 in closing costs, and we're going to need $1 million to fix it over the next 4 years. So we're not buying the building for $10 million. We're buying it for $11,100,000.
Sure, absolutely.
We're buying it for $11 million,
correct,
right? So the problem that I run into in the multifamily space is if I don't look at the building first, what winds up happening is I'm going in, I'm saying, everyone's talking $10 million. I'm like, no, we're paying 11. And another guy comes in and he's like, oh, we're going to buy it for 10 and this thing needs about $200,000 worth of work. And like, he's not seeing anything that I'm seeing. And what winds up happening is he could just go in and bid less. And I'll never win that bid just because my building past lets me see the future of the actual structure of an asset.
Got it.
So it hurts me. So with you guys, do you find that competitors that you're bidding against aren't seeing the amount of work that's ahead of them?
100%. And this is a topic that we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, I think we had an episode on CapEx and how important it is.
It's like the number one mistake I think people make.
It's the number one mistake.
And I think it's made.
It will bankrupt the deal.
And I think it's mostly made by, especially new entrants in the space that don't have experience.
Yes.
In the last, we started in this space. I don't want to say before everyone else, but just earlier than most who entered in the last several years. And, we've been going to trade shows and meeting with others and seeing what the newer guys are doing. And the biggest thing that we see is they're just not accounting for enough money to do what they want to do.
Are you still attending shows?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have to say that I attended a lot of them, and then I kind of backed off the past 8 to 9 months, and that's a mistake. You got to keep going.
One thing I'd like to, just say about this space is that there's just so many different things going on.
Right.
I mean, we're dealing with, water meters, right? Utilities, different types of management softwares, different types of materials for these homes, skirting qualities. What kind of homes are we going to put into the park?
Oh,
right?
So so really in the multifamily space, it's multifamily investing type shows. Events. Yeah. I shouldn't say shows. Events.
You're going
to mobile home park investing events. You're going to mobile home park
trade shows.
That sells the houses.
Correct. And the difference though that you will find between the two spaces, community owners are more apt to share like best practices with other community owners.
Yeah.
Where
at a trade show.
Listen, our first acquisition, we went into a market. It's a college town. We met with the largest operator in that town. And, at first he's like, why should I even talk with you guys? Right? You guys are going to be our competitors. And we were a little kind of on the fence of that, because it was a very marginal deal. It was a little smaller than we wanted to start. It did have great bones for us. We were a little, we wanted to make sure we were making the right decision. We had investor capital on this. And the first one is the most important one, as you know, right? So you have to be right on it.
Yeah.
And as we talked with the other community owner, we realized, and explained to him, if the rising tide will raise all boats, right? So if everybody in this market is below market and we're able to make improvements and we can, generate value where our lot rent improves, your lot rent, which you've got a bigger space, obviously, he had better infrastructure. He had he had a more of a park with better settings. You're going to be able to increase your lot rent as well. We're not going to compete for people. We're going to be able to add value for the residents and create more value in the parks. And I think there's a little bit more sharing in the mobile home park community between community owners. Like, hey, this is what best practice. How did you save money? How did we do this? I haven't gotten that in other sectors.
And this is also a lot smaller of a space than yours is, right? There's there's very little amounts of
relatively,
parks.
significantly smaller.
Yeah. In the last, 20 years, there's probably been such a small amount of new mobile home parks built.
Added. Right? And you brought up a great point the other day when we were talking. Where were we? I don't know. We were somewhere, and you brought up the fact that the mobile home park community is dwindling simply because towns are growing, and now the land value makes it worth it just to get rid of the mobile home park and drop buildings on it.
Correct.
That's an interesting.
So in major cities, right? If I'm in Atlanta or I'm in Charlotte, maybe the highest and best use of that land isn't necessarily a mobile home park because I could put more units on that land if I convert it to multifamily.
Yeah.
So developers will come in, they will pay a higher land price than we might look at it operationally.
Right.
And they'll guys like you'll come in and build a, big, beautiful building and kick out, all our residents, which is unfair to an affordable housing, right?
And are you looking for new construction?
You calling me part of the problem?
Not yet. Let's see how the rest of this episode goes, and then we'll figure it out.
Go ahead.
Are you looking for new construction in any of these areas? Or?
So we were right up until, we were actually going to build a 100-unit townhouse community in Dallas. And we went into contract, and I've never pulled, other than this deal, I've never pulled out of a deal during due diligence. This is the first time I've pulled out of a deal during due diligence. Because usually when I go into a deal and there's a due diligence term, I already know I'm buying it. And the only reason anything's going to happen during the due diligence term, if there was some blatant hiding going on from the seller or, whatever it was, if I sign a contract, I'm buying a deal. So we backed out during due diligence because, and I don't know what happened, but you look at something a million times and then you look at it again, you're like, I didn't see that. Whatever it is. And you looked at it for the 100th time and you're like, ooh, I don't like what I'm seeing. And what I saw in Dallas is I would zoom out and I would see 90 units available, 100 units available, 60 units available. And the screen was lit up with rentals.
And it starts to grow.
Yeah. And I'm like, holy shit. And I start so then I do research on the Dallas area where you think is invest in Dallas or Houston, it's great. 60 to 80,000 units are landing in Dallas in the next 12 months.
That's a lot of absorption.
Huge. So all of a sudden building, and the problem with Texas as a whole, other than Austin, which actually Austin's going to see a little bit of a flush too, is there's no topography. So you could build forever. Houston and Dallas could just keep growing out with very little obstruction. The land is flat. So farms could just continuously become buildings forever. You obviously could fill the whole state with houses, but these towns are not restricted with buildings.
So is that a red flag for you? That's a huge, so for you, you look at topography before you go into an area and you're saying, if I think this town could continue to build, that might hurt my apartments or my multifamily's ability to raise rents or stay occupied in the future.
So I was just in Houston this week. Yeah. And I met with a, top guy at a real estate firm. Yeah. Another group that was looking to invest. And I seen a lot of what you just said, right? And listen, it's definitely booming in Houston. The people I was with was actually from Dallas. And I think what's happening is there's been a big surge and a run over the last 4 or 5 years. And, there's a couple things happening. And I feel in every market is, the banks are tightening up a little bit, number one, right? And why are the banks tightening up? I think that the risk that they're seeing is exactly what you're saying. Is that there's a lot of vacancies in rentals everywhere you look.
Yeah. So
when I look for, like you were asking before, like, so do I look for a market or a deal? So right now we're hyper focused on Fayetteville, Arkansas, but there's very, very few deals on the market. But when the market, call it a couple years ago, and I could see in the next 12 months, the market will be filled with more deals. So now I go back looking for a deal. I'll look at a deal, I'll zoom out, go to a map, if I don't know the market. So if it's not an obvious market to go to, like some markets, like, yeah, of course I'll buy there. But if it's not a market I know, I go to the map, I zoom out, I do my quick diligence on the area. How many units are there? What's the current occupancy rate? How many jobs are coming? Is the population increasing or decreasing? What is it surrounded by? Do I have all my good box stores? So do I have my Starbucks, my Crumble cookies, where's the Whole Foods? So I want to know all this within the market. But being in the multifamily space is not, say you want to buy a two-family house or two-family house in New York. There's pages and pages and pages of houses. You want to buy a 100-unit multifamily building. You don't go to one market and there's a million for sale.
Sure.
So you have to kind of look like, do I like this deal? I like the way this deal looks. Now let me look at some financials and let me look at the area.
Got it. So we look at, we know the region we want to be in.
Yeah.
I think when we look at a deal, we're not worried about, hey, we're going to have an oversupply of mobile homes in that area. Like there's going to be a bunch of new parks that are going to be built because that's just not happening.
Yeah.
So that's not really a concern for us. We do look, because typically we'll buy 1.5 star communities, and our model is to bring it up to like a 3.5, 4 star over time.
And what makes that?
Well, what makes it is,
and where's that star rating?
So the star rating is, a 5-star community will be, coastal, paved roads, curbs, rolled curbs,
so this is
parking
almost the
pads.
equivalent of like A, B, C, D for me.
Correct. Yeah. And that's what I was going to get. So for where you go and buy. But for us, like a 5-star community, rolled curbs, paved roads, parking pads, new homes,
that's Class A, mobile home park.
That is top of the line.
And in the beginning, I'll just point this out because you're saying you need to see the deal first. In the beginning, I needed to see the deal first.
Yeah.
Nowadays, when somebody's coming to me with a community, I don't need to see the deal at all.
Yeah.
I just need to know about the numbers. I need to know where it is. And one thing that we focus on is we like to be in areas that we're already in, close by. This way we can, because we're self-operating all of these communities ourselves.
And then this way we can expand off of that. So we've got comfortable in the region and we can grow. But when we do look at those deals, we do look at crime rates, right? That's super important because if we're in an area where we're going to be making those improvements, we know in that community there might be issues, but we can eliminate what happens inside our community. I can't do anything about what happens outside my community, right? So if that becomes a big sticking point for us, and we went to, we were in one spot in Alabama where we drew, and the park was on a basis play exactly what we wanted. It was 122 spots. It was $750,000, the ask price, which the number itself is attractive.
Yeah.
There was about 40 homes in there. There was a good infill opportunity, which means we could fill up the vacant lots.
Yeah.
But as we drove there, right across the street, right next to us, there was housing complexes, right? And, cul-de-sacs where 7 of every 8 homes were boarded up and just crime-ridden neighborhoods. And so even though that was a good basis play, even though we were in probably the next city over, we just said it's any work we did in there was going to be, it would have been impossible to change the nature of that community because the community as a whole never would have accepted it.
What do your tenants typically do for a living? Like what kind of tenants do you have?
It's...
And there's no subsidy program,
no,
right?
So our model in this, in terms of operations, we like a resident-owned community. We find that when the resident is vested, meaning they own their home and we were basically leasing the land, it just turns for better operations for the community. It's better for the residents because you'll know, Chris, if you came in and you bought a home in our community, that Eric also is a long-term homeowner. You're going to make better care of your lot. You're probably going to make better decisions, and you're going to know that your neighbor is also looking to be there for the long haul. And we believe that that's one of our value propositions.
And these homes, Chris, they'll last forever. I mean, some of these properties we buy, the homes are from the 60s and 70s.
Right.
And if there's a homeowner in there that's been there for a long time, as long as they're taking care of things and they're not letting a small leak turn into a huge lake, or they're repairing their roof, these homes will last forever. When you have renters,
multi, you stay away from the 60s.
Yes,
we're out. In the 60s, I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is what it is when you buy these parks.
We wouldn't buy a home that age, but sometimes it comes comes with the property. If the homeowner's maintaining it, great.
Right.
Now on the infill, we'll look to bring in either resale homes or brand new homes, which is an easiest.
So if you bring in a brand new home, what is the net expense around for the tenant or the homeowner?
So the homeowner has two options. Either they'll purchase the home outright from a third-party lender, right? So we bring a new home in they'll
write the $50,000 check.
Third-party retailer. They'll use financing
from a third-party lender, right? So we bring the home in. They'll get a third-party lender to finance. That's option one.
And then you'll get your $50,000 check.
The factory will be paid off.
Yeah.
Right. The factory will be paid off.
Right.
And now we have a resident in the community with a brand new home.
And they're paying you how much in rent?
They're paying us lot rent. And
how much is that?
Depends on the market.
Give me
anywhere from $285 to $450.
$285 to $450, and then their loan payment would be another
$700-800.
Their total payment we usually look at the price point of the homes to model to where, hey, this is what a 3-bedroom apartment would rent.
Yep.
Our market is just a tick below.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to figure out, because affordability is a problem in the country through and through.
Yes.
So I'm trying to figure out, if I'm just a person with a family, what's the difference for me moving in, monetarily wise, what's the difference for me moving in a 3-bedroom apartment or a 2-bedroom apartment and a 2-bedroom mobile home?
So the cost for a person to live in one of these homes, brand new, a nice home, a type of home that we would bring into the community, with inclusive of lot rent, could be anywhere from like $950 to $1,100 a month. They would own their own home. They would have a mortgage.
And how many bedrooms is that?
3-bedroom.
3-bedroom. And they get some space around it, a little yard.
Some of our communities, I mean, people have half-acre lots. I mean, some of our communities are a little bit tighter. Right. They're on their way to home ownership. And you know, us, when we buy these communities.
So it's not necessarily a much less expensive option for people. It's just a better.
I don't know if it's. I think it's a different market.
Yes,
it's people who live in communities that love communities, right?
Yeah.
And you're not typically getting somebody from a garden style apartment to move into a mobile home park, nor are people from in a mobile home typically going into a garden style apartment. I think they're two different markets.
Yeah, I mean, so you know, an apartment and a mobile. So what you just explained, and an apartment, your option is a little bit less, but they're getting a completely different life experience.
Correct.
Yeah. So I'm just basically what I'm trying to play out in my head is like, where is there the option, or it doesn't exist? Because actually, before this podcast, I thought mobile home park, forgetting about everything you get with it. So you get your own home, you get the lot around it, all that. I actually thought it would be a less expensive place to live. Just counting the dollars, I thought it would be a significant.
Here's where it gets a lot less expensive, right?
Yeah.
If someone owns their home, right, then all they have, their only responsibility is lot rent. So theoretically, we have homes that might be resale that are not at that price point, right?
That was for a brand new.
That's a brand new homes. But now,
I get it. I actually think if I was raising a family, I actually think I'd rather live in that than an apartment.
Now, just to explain to you, so when we buy these communities, and let's say there's 30, 40 homes that are older there, their average price of payment, inclusive of lot rent across the boards for us, is anywhere from $650 to $850 a month. They're on their way to home ownership in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Once they pay off their home, which could be anywhere from 3 to 6 years, they'll then only have to pay lot rent.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah. So you're
and that's where the affordability. Yeah. And this is where this becomes the most affordable housing stock.
And one more thing that you probably don't know, and I come from mortgage background. Right. Individuals can get a third-party mortgage on these homes with a poor credit score and with very little money down, 5 to 10%, primarily for the reason that these homes are on our land, right? So because these homes are on our land, because we have a relationship with the third party lender, an individual with a 500 credit score, as long as their income can support the lot rent and the mortgage, they can get into that home for 5 to 10% down.
What do you want your tenants to make a year? Do you have a goal?
So typically it'll be 3 times the amount of whatever their payment is.
The total.
Yeah. Right. So that's typically the standards that you look at.
$40,000 a year. $30,000 a year.
It depends on what that payment is for that home. If that home is $650 a month, right? Then it's.
So are you taking 3 times the amount of the mortgage and the lot?
Well, that's including. So if they're getting third party financing, they're getting approved by the lender, right? If we're coming in
and
on
that lender's approving our lot rent in that equation as well.
Got it.
So you said you use third party managers, and here's where it gets interesting, right? Yeah. So you have third party managers in your space that are managing your building, but you're not a sit back passive type of guy, and you've got other investors' capital with it. So how do you handle those managers? How do you manage the manager? Yeah.
So we have weekly calls with the manager, and it's basically, let's talk about the problems in the community and what are we putting. So really the topics of the phone call are, well, let's back up a second. Who do we get to third party manage the property? We don't go and just pick the person, a quick phone call. Hey, we have an apartment community for you to manage. So it's going to be, we're going to interview a whole bunch of property managers. So usually going into a new market, it's 4 or 5 property managers we'll interview. We'll go visit their office. We'll sit through their spiel. How do you manage it? Listen for keywords that they say. And just from being in business a long time, you know what the keywords are. So, who's doing the maintenance? Are you getting third party maintenance? Do you have your own maintenance guy? Are you dedicating a guy to our community? Just all the questions that we go through. And when we finally pick somebody, we've actually been successful in this fact that we haven't been fooled or tricked, meaning like we haven't hired someone to be like, oh my gosh, these are the worst ever. So my confidence in my property managers is high. And we actually have a virtual assistant that takes the property manager report and condenses it into a manager's report. So us being the asset manager. So now we have every week, we know the stats of the property. We look at it, and that's the topic of conversation on the phone call. So we have a phone call every week, and we want to know which way is occupancy trending. What are the new leases going out the door? How many open work orders there are? So we just hit the phone call usually lasts about 45 minutes, and we just hit the high level items. And the most important thing for us is we have occupied buildings with rent going out the door at the right price, and then we're constantly balancing how hard are we pushing the rents and how hard are we pushing the renovations. So back to the CapEx, like that's the biggest thing that we're constantly dialing up or down. So when we decide to do work on an apartment, we want to make sure that we're getting that money back in 36 months. So if we do a renovation for $10,000, we want to make sure that over the, and that's a big renovation, but we want to make sure over a 3-year period that we're going to get that $10,000 back in a period of 36 months.
Essentially, $300 a month has to come on the increase on the rent.
Correct. Yes.
Got it.
And that's basically it. So I mean, you have to. The biggest hurdle is to make sure you hire the right property manager. Once you hire the right property manager, now you're just going through small things. I think asset management is a highly overlooked thing. Where if you step back and you're passive, now and I'm trying to. There's another business I could compare it to. If you take your foot off the gas as an asset manager, the property manager just wants to make sure that it's occupied and they're collecting rent, but they're not leaning in because they don't want the responsibility of the occupancy dropping to 90%. Mm-hmm. So whereas an operator or an asset manager, we lean in and push them along to make sure that they're constantly getting the absolute most they can for the entire community. And the expenses are as least as they can. So any major repairs we're looking at. And it's actually, and this is a podcast, so I can't show you, but our manager report that we put together, so the VA that he takes the property manager's report and he assembles our report to look at, like a quick 1-page glance, is extremely valuable to us. We know which way, we know which way the bank accounts are trending. So with every deal, we have the property manager has two accounts. They have a trust account, which is the security deposits, an operational account. Then we have our operational account, and we have our manager account. So even through the trending of bank accounts, we're able to tell how a deal is doing. So asset management should not be slept on, and if you're passive about it, your community will not be performing like it needs to perform.
So one of the challenges.
Is that a long-winded response to your question?
Yeah, but I think
good response.
But it's a good response because it went into detail.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's
Sometimes I think detail guys like us, like our brain goes so deep when I explain something.
No, it was good.
I think, but that's the whole reason why hopefully people come and listen to the podcast.
Yeah,
right? When I listen to a podcast, I want to get information that I could take back and what I can pencil
I
out.
don't want to be too short. Like we push them hard.
We talk to them.
Yeah, we talk to them.
We make sure things are going good.
Yeah.
Ah, you're doing okay?
Yeah,
Great.
is everything good?
Yeah.
All right.
But you have a responsibility, right? So you have investors' capital, right?
Yes.
They want to know that, they're paying you to do a job. Your job is, hey, I've got to source the deal. I've got to find the deal. I've got to manage the deal. And that means managing the managers and making sure they're performing. So, and I know we were talking before, we had a management company the first time, and they fired us within 6 months because we were managing the managers.
Story,
and they just said, 6 months into it, they're like, hey, man, we weren't.
Yeah, you're too much for us.
You're too much for us because we had certain indicators that we wanted to make sure that were happening, and they just weren't. We didn't like how the performance overall was going. We had a responsibility to deliver, and so we just took a more active role, which they were unhappy. Listen, it just didn't work.
You know what I look for, actually? This is a great. So all the bullshit I just told you, right? That happens. But really, what I'm looking for when I sit down in a property manager's office, I want a New York personality. I want a fast-paced,
aggressive,
someone who could process information quickly and is aggressive.
We actually think one of the advantages in the MHP space, right, because there's not a tremendous amount of property managed, it almost creates a barrier to entry for some people coming in, because if you're not able to self-manage that property, you're gonna step back out of it. So we built out an infrastructure for self-managing the communities
we love all of our property managers at this point. I'm happy to say that we have a great team and staff.
Yeah.
But you get on the phone with them sometimes, and it's 20 minutes.
Get it out.
And it's taken us some time for them to kind of know how we are quick. But we've trained our property managers. I wouldn't say that we have any New York style mentality property managers, though.
Yeah. You know what? And I just turned 40, so I could say probably over the last couple of years, it's gotten significantly easier for me to interrupt people in a conversation and be like, guy, get it out. Like, what are we talking about? Let's speed up a little bit. And because I used to be like the more polite guy and just let you talk. And I'm like, my bandwidth, I don't have this time for what you're talking to me about. Like, just say, I'm going to re-ask the question. Just tell me what the answer is. And
setting expectations. It's like, hey, I have 5 minutes. We have a couple of things to go over. Can we go over this quickly? And sometimes it sounds a little gruff, but I always let people know, like, listen, it's going to come out blunt. I just, I
find myself doing that 10 times a day, telling someone how much time I have. And it helps.
Dom, a good friend of ours, Dom Ciccarelli. So I was on the phone with him once, and he's like, he asked me a question. He says, tell me whatever he was asking. I don't remember. He says, in 1 or 2 sentences, tell me this. And I'm like, I love that. Yeah. In 1 or 2 sentences, tell me the answer to this question.
Correct. Because if you can't say it, then well, except when you're talking about the data you're looking for as an asset manager. We needed 5 minutes.
I actually officially want to go back in time. I want my New York answer to be transcribed over my first answer.
So now, I mean, look, you're there, you're operating, and I know you've been down in this space for a while. Like, how do you know that you've gotten that community turned around? Or is that a clear answer? Is that something that you...
Here's what happens. So
in 2 sentences.
Yeah. I could probably get it out in 3. So in our report, we have a line graph that shows occupancy. We take over a property, occupancy is good. So before you sell a multifamily, the occupancy, and we know this, when someone's trying to sell a multifamily, the goal is to keep it occupied. It doesn't matter if it's with aliens. Just put someone in the units, and we want to see this thing to be 100% occupied or close to it. So what happens, we buy this thing, it's at the occupancy that we bought it at, 98, whatever it is. We buy it, occupancy falls. there's a floor. And then when the occupancy, and it's happened on every single deal we've purchased, occupancy falls.
What's that percentage that you underwrite for?
Yeah, so actually we typically underwrite for a 10 to 15% vacancy year one.
So we look at it, just to give you an idea, typically we underwrite for 25%, right? For that we're going to lose residents day one when we come in and we start making changes.
And it's been more.
Sometimes, but we underwrite for 25%.
Yes.
But we will if we know that the community is really below market, we know that, and below market, undercapitalized. We go in there, we know there's a lot of deferred maintenance. People are living in situations that we're not going to be comfortable doing it. That resident that wants that really below market rent, right? And they're willing to live in situations that we're just not comfortable operating because we feel that's a safety or health concern. That resident might not be comfortable. After we make those improvements to say, hey, I value those improvements enough to pay a little bit more. So we understand that we're probably going to end up losing that person because it's not going to work. I can't run it at that number. I can't leave you in a home that's occupied looking like that. That might be a hazard.
Right.
And so if you're not going to be part of that solution, understand that, then we've got to find another solution for you, which might be that you have to, you might have to exit the property. But but your expectation is a little bit lower in the multifamily.
And I think it's because we have annual leases. So where people are turning a little bit more often in multi than they are, like you have a very sticky community.
Yes.
So we're actually, being that leases are turning, so say if we have a 100-unit property, we have 10 units, 12 units, 12 leases expiring a month. Every single time a lease expires, we could go aggressive or lighten it up. So if we see occupancy dropping too quickly, we're like, oh, hold on. Maybe the next batch of leases goes out the door at 900 instead of 1,000. So we're constantly tailoring to make sure that we don't have too aggressive of a drop, but we know we made the turn when it bounces off the floor and it comes back up. And usually what we're doing is the aliens that the seller put in place just to make sure his property was occupied, they're out. They're out.
Similar to what
I actually have an interesting story.
Sure.
So I bought a 146 unit community in Fayetteville, North Carolina. It was a third of 3 deals we bought from the seller, and I actually have 2 good stories for this one. But tell me if you want the second one after the first one. So we get.
So wait, is this going to be the first one or the second first one? Which one's the better of the 2?
Well, so this is a post close one, and then if you want the pre-close one, I'll give that to you.
Okay.
Too. So one's operational and one's actually business, like closing a deal. So this one is basically, it's simple. We got a phone call. So this deal made the turn. We hit the floor of the vacancy and it came up. We get a phone call from the property manager, like, we have great news. Like, oh, what's that? They're like, there was an average of 20 911 calls at this community a week, and we only got 2 last week. And I'm like, 20 a week?
This is after you purchased?
Yeah. I'm like,
did you find out about that before you purchased?
No.
Of course not.
You look at all these stats, you're like, listen, I heard from a guy a long time ago, you don't want to know everything.
That's right? Actually a good question to call into the sheriff's department and ask before you buy a property.
Right.
Hey, how many 911 calls have you gotten?
But I'll tell you, this property is a very good deal. So I said, the first thing out of my mouth was, good thing we didn't know that. Because if we knew it, we probably would have said, oh, this thing's a problem, stay away from it. So now we got it from 20 to 2 911 calls. And she says, don't worry, the 2 911 calls that happened were they were basically completely nonsense. So I'm like, oh, all right, I guess that's good news.
That's improvement.
Yeah, we did good. Yeah,
that's a 90% improvement.
Yeah. But so, I mean,
did you put that out to the residents since we've taken over a 90% drop in 911 calls?
Oh, man. So we were in the right market, right area. And it just, you know what? The guy, the family, it was a family-owned property. The family that owned it didn't do what they should have. And actually, that's a testament to, like, when you buy a property with low rents, there's a good chance that there's low, like, you're raising the rent, it's the bad people who are leaving anyway.
Sure. They're gonna hear that there's change, and they're gonna get worried that change is gonna affect them. And so a lot of people on that will happen. They'll leave without you saying anything. So one of the things that we've gotten to do is when we buy a community that's, like we discussed, like a 1.5 star, we know that there's changes that need to be made.
Yeah.
We put up a big sign, change is coming. Right. So what happens
is really put a sign up?
We put up a sign that say change is coming under new management. Right. And as soon as you do that, people leave. But the people who leave are typically the people you want to evict anyway. Right. So you put a big change is coming and people, we've had pushback. Well, people don't like change. Exactly. The people that don't like change in that community, they're going to get out. Right. Right. And they're going to save you an eviction.
Yes.
The people that want change are going to be like, thank goodness, these are the people, we want to see this change. We would love being here, but we don't like being here in these conditions. Yeah. And so we put up that sign to, to save us.
Change is here.
Right? Change is coming, right?
Change is coming.
Change is coming, right? And it's just, it's like saying, hey, nice shirt. Yeah. Right? Did I say nice shirt? If you take it as a compliment, you say thank you. If you take it as an insult, you're gonna, hightail it out of there. So if they take it as an insult and they hightail it out of there, they're doing us a favor. And saving us a couple of dollars in doing it. It's a cheap enough investment to make.
I like that.
I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, we covered a lot.
We covered a lot. And I don't even know how much time this went, but this kind of felt really like a free flow conversation. But to wrap up, just to put it together, we'll
save my next story. We'll save my other story.
Unless you want to give it.
If you want to invite me back on, I'll give you another one.
Okay.
We'll save it.
We'll save it. So to talk about some of the differences and things that are in common. Obviously, it's finding markets that work, right? Whether you're in multifamily or in your manufactured housing. And quite frankly, in both of those spaces, there's not a lot of, say, inventory. You're not going to find, if you look in the scale in the mobile home park industry, you might not find 5 parks in the community that you live in. You're going to have to be comfortable being uncomfortable looking somewhere else. Yes. Just like there's not 100, unit multifamily buildings, like a whole list of them in every community, right?
Every market.
And one thing that I think sticks out for people is it is definitely possible to operate on a grand scale from a distance.
Yes.
It's possible. It's nice to see that somebody else from our same market is doing that.
And then another, maybe some difference operationally, in terms of third-party managers being a little bit more prevalent in the multifamily space. In manufactured housing, there's less options, right? So if you're going to find a third-party manager, you've got to really do your homework to see, or you've got to be willing to operate it yourself. I think the value and the basis is probably a little different, right? And we kind of touched on that a little bit. But you basically have you have a market for each, right? We're probably a tick under in terms of affordability. Our residents probably not going, stepping up into your building. But they're in that manufactured house space, but meanwhile, you're also serving a need in the affordable housing component anyway in your communities.
The average rent for the whole portfolio, the average rent is like $1,100 or $1,200.
So it's affordable straight across the board, nationwide. So what are you doing now? Like, is there anything you're working on now specifically?
Yeah, we have a 48 unit deal under contract, and we just got another 66 unit deal under contract, 4 hours away from. So we're currently operating in Fayetteville, Arkansas, which Northwest Arkansas. So we bought something in Fayetteville. Now we're buying something in Rogers, very close, same corridor. You would be considered the same exact market, probably about 15 minutes from one another. So we're closing a 48 unit deal there. Currently raising money. We're raising $2.5 million. We raised about $1.5 million now. And all our funds are typically the same. You double. It's set for a double in 6 years.
Got it.
So very stable type investment. We pay monthly. This one specifically, a big difference between the funds is we're going to double the money in 6 years, but when do we refi and how much do you get back? So this one we're going to refi by year 2, and our underwriting shows we're going to be able to return 40% of the capital by year 2.
Got it.
And that's two.
And so if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do it?
Stoutcap.com. Go to the website. You'll see what we got going on. There'll be a link to the portal, link to the deal. You'll be able to see everything right from the website, stoutcap.com.
Got it. Anything you want to add, Eric?
No. Glad to have gotten to learn about what you're doing. I love the different things going on between what we're doing and what you're doing. But thanks a lot for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. And this has been another episode of the MHP Exchange Podcast. If you want more information, you can find out at the MHPExchange.com, which is your one source where you have industry news, recent closings, listings, financing opportunities, and tips for owning and operating a mobile home park all in one site, all on there. And of course, you can also find this podcast on the MHPExchange.com. So check out that website for further information. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. Look forward to hearing on what you're doing going forward and just some more of the information we're looking to flow to you on the MHPExchange.com. Thank you.